Hi guys, I'm officially a second-year family medicine resident. Intern year is finally over. It actually ended at the end of June, but I just had a lot going on, so I couldn't film this video as early as I would have liked. This was kind of just my reflections on intern year and how things went. I would definitely have to say it was probably one of the most exhilarating, frustrating, but definitely rewarding years that I have ever had. I'm pretty sure I cried like 5 times at work. I'm really good at finding a good closet to cry in now. But yeah, that was definitely intern year. I definitely cried at work. But now that I'm done with intern year, I'm trying to reflect on all the things that helped, the things that didn't help, and just generally my thoughts about becoming a senior. So let's get right into it. So I would say the things that helped me were like just being close with my support system, and having one in general is really important. I didn't actually think that I was gonna be the type of person that really needed a support system. I know that sounds crazy, but I was like, yeah, I could do this all by myself, which obviously I'm sure I could, but it makes it a lot easier having a support system. Having an exercise and nutrition routine. Cannot emphasize this enough. Initially, like at the beginning of intern year, I didn't really have that. I quickly started to realize that without having an exercise and nutrition routine, I could not sustain this. Like the hours were just too long. It was so strenuous. Like what I ate was very important. Really had to up my protein intake, and being a vegetarian, that's not always the easiest thing in the world to do. But I realized that what I ended up doing, especially on night shift, was just like having a lot of sugar and a lot of caffeine, and then like obviously it felt good in the moment, but like then you would have the crash, and like the crash would be so much worse. My goal was just trying to sustain that energy level. So yeah, that was definitely something that really helped. Another thing that really helped is getting 7 hours of sleep. Obviously when possible. It wasn't always possible, but I genuinely tried my best. And what that meant for me is that it was like cutting down a lot of other fun things that I would typically like to do outside of work, just because I was really prioritizing my sleep more than anything. I think it was more so, it's just like, when you're well rested, you just feel more alert and awake, obviously. It allows your brain to just function at its peak performance. I really felt like I needed to do that because the learning curve was very steep, and you have an immeasurable like feeling of responsibility, even though like honestly you have like an entire team behind you. But just like being an intern and signing orders for the first time, it really just is a very surreal kind of feeling, and also just like this huge weight of responsibility. So you want to just feel like you're functioning at your peak. That means eating right, sleeping enough, and just being the best that you can be. Also, this sounds silly, but like I think the other keys to success is just trying to get there early, because for me, I hadn't done a rotation or like a sub-I or anything at the hospital that I matched at, so I didn't really know the hospital that well. So I really had to make sure to get there early and like factor in time to get lost, especially like the entire month of July. I got so lost. I think like at one point, I'm pretty sure like I was averaging like 10 to 12,000 steps a day in that month of July, just because I kept walking back and forth a lot. I already have a propensity of getting lost, so this obviously just exacerbated the situation. So anyways, get there early. The next thing I would say is I constantly ask for feedback at work, and I think that's something that I started to do when I was a medical student, just because I feel like people are very different in terms of like their comfort level when it comes to giving feedback. Some people, you know, even though they're attendings, they might not feel comfortable because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Some attendings don't care if they hurt your feelings. It really varies. So in order to optimize your own experience and your own learning, I started to just consistently ask for feedback. So let's say at the very minimum, like if you have a 4-week block, I would ask feedback at the end of the second week, and then again at the end of my block, because I just wanted to make sure that you know, what I thought I was doing correctly. That's why actually the mid-block evaluation is so important, because even when you're a resident, you still get evaluated and you still get graded based on that. So you want to make sure that you're performing where you need to be performing, and if you're not, that's fine, but you need to make sure that you know what to do in order to get to where you need to be. And in order to do that, you need to find out what you're doing wrong or what you're doing right, because it's also helpful to know, like, hey, you know, this is something that I'm doing that is very effective and that people like. Okay, I'm going to keep doing that. So either way, I always like to ask for feedback. So I think that was really helpful for me, constantly asking for feedback in a regular fashion. The next thing is I really just leaned into my type A personality, and for me personally, not everyone necessarily has to do this, but for me, it works well to creating a color-coded system so that I can stay on top of the things that I have done, the things that I need to do, and prioritizing my tasks. I think especially at the beginning, it just felt very overwhelming for me, and I was having some trouble prioritizing what tasks I needed to do first and what could wait a little bit. I just felt like everything was important. It is important, but there are certain things that need to be done sooner rather than later, and for me, it was just easier for me to create a color-coded system, and I can create a video on that a little bit later, but that's what worked for me. So I got one of those multicolored pens. Okay, now let's talk about what did not help, okay? Do not do this. So I bought a bunch of books that I panic bought like right before intern year started, and honestly I didn't really use them, but I was like so freaked out about being an intern and being a resident, and I just wanted to, you know, make sure I had everything, and I got all these books, but ultimately I just end up using Up to Date, quite frankly, most of the time, honestly, because it's faster. Probably make some content or probably go into that a little bit later about all the books that I bought that I don't think that I would have bought in retrospect, and what books I did really like. So go through that a little bit later. But yeah, definitely I would say do not panic buy a bunch of books at the beginning of intern year. I don't know if that's just a me thing, but definitely probably not worth doing, because you'll see what you use as your year goes on. So just give yourself some patience. What didn't work? Getting less than 7 hours of sleep. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, you can't always get 7 hours. That's just the reality of it. But I know that the days that I didn't have 7 hours, like especially on night shift, because of like the difference in the schedule, it was hard for me to get 7 hours. I was just really struggling. I was on that struggle bus. I was driving that struggle bus. So try to get 7 hours. Very important. Very, very important. The next thing that didn't help, stress eating candy. Okay, like literally I started to realize it was like a pattern. I typically don't really like candy. I love chocolate, but candy, like, you know, once in a while type of thing. But I noticed that like ever since intern year started, my candy consumption just went up, and like the crappier and the more artificial it was, the more addicted I was. And it always correlated to when I was like extremely stressed out. Like obviously, like you get it, you consume it, and then you have this like burst of energy and you're like, yeah, I can do this. And then you have just like a boom crash. And it was just like the highs and lows were just like too much. So like the second half of intern year, I was mindful of that, and I tried to like actively make a point to recognize what I was doing, and then try to like have some protein instead, just so that it could stabilize. Like it was just like those ups and downs, it was just not worth it. Obviously I cracked a few times, a lot of times, but I always ask myself, is the low worth it? Like, am I really crashing? Are my energy levels low enough right now that I'd be willing to deal with the inevitable crash that follows? Most of the time the answer was no, so I didn't actually end up eating it. Although even though sometimes the answer was no, I still did it anyways. But yeah, I would definitely say it was something that's a bad habit. And still, I've gotten much better at, but something I definitely struggled with and didn't think was helpful to do in intern year. So try to stay away from it. The next thing is eating out a lot. I definitely don't think it helped that initially, like I used to keep buying stuff from the hospital cafeteria. And I know a lot of people do it, so I did it too. I just don't think it helped, especially being vegetarian. I just didn't have the nutrients that I needed in order to function at my peak performance. And I started bringing in food because I got so sick of the hospital food. But now, like, you know, that's pretty much what I bring. Like, we do get a stipend of like, I think it's like $1,200 to spend at the hospital for food. Just being vegetarian, I just found that like I was just ultimately just using it on coffee at the coffee shop. So yeah, I think that was the other thing. I didn't think it was helpful to eat out. The next thing that was not helpful was being timid. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I was actually really timid because I was pretty intimidated at the beginning of intern year, and I don't think that was helpful because you miss out on learning opportunities. And I think that I quickly realized that, thank God, and I got over it pretty fast because I'm not really naturally a really shy or timid person, but it was just the circumstances. I was just like a little intimidated, but I got over it pretty fast. Like, oh well, I just gotta know this, so I gotta know it. But yeah, it definitely doesn't help to be timid. Honestly, you just have to get over it. The way I thought about it and the way I got over it was like, look, it doesn't even matter about me. I need to know this because someday my patient's gonna need this, or my patient needs this right now, and I just need the answer. That's all I need. If you think I'm dumb, cool. But I need to take care of my patient. I need to know what I need to know. So let's figure it out. Or, you know, if you think of it that way, it kind of like helps you get out of your shell a little bit faster. So that's what I think. So yeah, those are some things like briefly that were helpful during my intern year, and things that I did that I don't think were great. I'm kind of nervous about being a senior. I think being a senior has its own set of responsibilities. So I'm kind of nervous about that. In my program, we're the first group of seniors. So automatically we're chief residents, and so having said that, there's an additional layer of responsibilities, which includes participating in the development of the teaching curriculum, administrative responsibilities. So I'm kind of nervous, but I'm pretty excited. But I am a little nervous about it, but about juggling all of that. I'm also going to be commuting to my rural site for now. I'm trying to figure out the housing situation, so I think it might be a little tough to figure out like my time management. So I'm a little nervous about that. In some ways, like I feel like being a senior is going to be a little bit easier just because the schedule is not as crazy as intern year. Intern year was definitely really draining. I think that being a senior, that just the hours are better. I have definitely more weekends, so I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing more like family medicine based stuff and like actually being in my rural clinic a lot more, which is, you know, what I signed up for. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. Even though like intern year had amazing opportunities in, you know, rotations like surgery and like ICU and stuff, it's not somewhere that typically people stay in post residency. So I'm looking forward to doing more bread and butter family medicine. That was my little rambling video wrapping up intern year. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it's something that you guys can learn from. Thank you for watching my videos and being a part of my intern year. I'll check in with you guys and let's get year 2.